Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Sydney North Local Planning Panel. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Camaragal. And I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. The meeting today is to consider the determination of 4 matters. Item 1 is to be heard in the public meeting, as there are more 10 submissions that were received, and the remaining items will be heard in the closed session. The panel members for today are myself, Helen Lockhead as the chair, Jean Morel, expert here, Michael Raymond, panel member, expert, or Solicitor, and Carla Castellanos, our community representative to my right. Just before we go any further, does anyone have a declaration of interest to make on any matter? No conflicts of interest. No, and I don't either. Thank you. The panel has been provided with an assessment report for each item prepared by the council staff, and we have been briefed by council staff on the key issues the applications raise. We have all read your submissions, and so there's no need to repeat these. I request that you focus on the issues that may not have been covered, and if another speaker has raised a question that you would like to make again, please go to the agreement rather than speaking. This meeting is being held by a public teleconference, and so I request that you be considerate and respectful of each other and remain on mute until you're asked to speak at the meeting. I also request that nobody interjects with another when there's that person speaking. Today we have a number of people registered to speak. The usual practice is for us to allow 5 minutes for each objector to make their points, and then we may ask any questions to clarify, and after hearing from the speakers, we will actually ask the applicant to respond. When we are finished, we'll adjourn and we'll consider the matter and any other determinations that we have to consider today. If you're registered to speak, the panel will be recorded. As all public meetings are recorded, they will appear and be uploaded on the council website. The audio recording will be available 7 days from this meeting, and there is to be no other recording of the meeting. So, thank you, and we will now discuss the first item, and that is 37 Bayview Street, Lavender Bay. And the first registered speaker I have to speak is Norman Blumenthal from 39 Bayview Street. Norman, are you there? Yes, I can see you there. You just need to...
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity of making my comments. And as you've said, I'm a neighbour at 39 Bayview Street. I've lived there for over 12 years and have enjoyed the amenities of the area and views of the iconic Harbour Bridge, Opera House and the city. When the applicant submitted their original DA application in 2021, although there were many other issues, our only request was that they were considerate of maintaining our iconic views. But unfortunately, no alteration was made in resubmitting their amended DA. We still lose a large portion of our views, particularly from the living areas. The full impact has not been assessed by council, either height poles or even a site visit. All we have asked in the past and are asking for now is a slight modification or amendment to the balcony design on the northeastern boundary that would go a long way to lessen the impact on our loss of iconic views and would have very little effect on their living space. Our balcony, as well as that of the other neighbour on the other side at 35 Bayview Street, both have cut off corners to our balconies to reduce view loss for our neighbour, and it would be appropriate that the applicant considers doing the same for us. A similar architectural design modification was recently made by the same architect after numerous planning panel meetings to a property across the road at 21 King George Street, where the balcony was altered and shaped to reduce view loss by the neighbour. with very little or no effect on the amenities. We are more than happy to share the view of this beautiful location, and we realize there will be inevitable loss. All we are asking is consideration on the part of our new neighbors and the architect. With very minor design and shape alteration to their balcony, we can all share the amenities of the area. Because of my limited insight into the technical aspects involved, I've engaged consultants to help me understand the implications of this problem. And I would appreciate him taking the discussion further. Thank you very much.
So I believe that is Stuart Gordon, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, okay, just remember that it's 5 minutes or rather than 10 minutes.
Okay, so my name is Stuart Gordon. I work as an associate planner for SJB Planning, and Norman engaged us to help him understand the impact of the proposed dwelling upon his property in the order of a year to 18 months ago. We submitted a submission on behalf of Norman to the original DA and also to the amended DA. It's our opinion that the assessment does not satisfy the tests under Section 415 of the Environmental Planning Assessment Act, given council has not attended the site, nor has the applicant in determining or assessing the view impact to Norman's property. We feel that the threshold test of a thorough assessment hasn't been fulfilled in that regard. Notwithstanding, we feel that there's a simple solution to the to help mitigate the impact upon the view that Norman and his family enjoy, and it would mean a minor reduction in the first level balcony and the awning to that balcony. And if it may please the panel, I'd like to share my screen with the proposed design amendment, which would mitigate the impact. If I'm able to do that.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. I'm just trying to...
Has this been sent through to the panel or to the council at all, Stuart?
No, it has not, and I apologise. We sort of didn't send it through when I registered, but we did seek a permission to do so, and we felt that we were able to do that. So I'll just share the screen now, if that's possible. Sorry, I'm having trouble locating it. For whatever reason, I can't seem to do that. But if I may, I can describe the proposed amendment.
Can you assist, Peter?
Stuart,
We'll see whether we can assist you.
Stuart, would you like me to try and share it?
Yes, please, if you could, Lewis.
Sure,
Lewis is an urban design and visual assessment expert who's also assisting Norman. It's a simple floor plan demonstrating reduction in the northeast corner of the balcony. If we can just go straight to the floor plan, please. And there it is there. On the second image, on the lower image, the reduction of 1.85 metres along the northern edge of the balcony and 2 metre reduction along the eastern edge would mitigate the views, the view impact from Norman's living room towards the harbour bridge. And the upper image is the change of design that would be required to the awning to the level 1 balcony. We feel that getting back to the, thanks Lewis, that's fine. If we were able to achieve that, we feel that the impact would be completely mitigated. We don't feel that's an unreasonable request.
Silent.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's this part.
Yes, okay. Does anyone have any questions?
I do. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Gordon. The mitigation measures that you are proposing, how far back from the glass line are those views taken, and is that in what distance the mitigation measure will assist in preserving the view? So how far from the glass line?
I'm just not understanding the question, but basically, the impacts are felt from Norman's living room in a seated and standing position, and it would mitigate those impacts completely effectively. Just on another point, we note that council has requested the implementation or a condition of consent that would actually increase the view impact by putting a screen along the northern edge of the eastern boundary. So while council's trying to address one impact, they're actually worsening the view impact by implementing a condition that would put a screen through there. We suggest that our design amendment would overcome both issues, because it would set the balcony back, but they could also have a screen along that chamfered edge without impacting the views. It's our opinion that the application fails the fourth test in the view sharing tenacity LEC case, in that even though it might be a compliant development, a better design would achieve a much fairer and better outcome.
The question, just to explain, is the farther you are from the glass line, the bigger the impact. So my question is, how far from the edge of the window are we standing in this position where you took these pictures?
Approximately 2.5 meters.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
No.
Okay.
One more, sorry, yeah. And the mitigation of the impact that you are trying to achieve is because in the view portion of the upper curvature of the Harbour Bridge is obstructed. Is that the impact that you're trying to prevent?
Yep, there's the impact of the view of the Harbour Bridge, and also the land-water interface will be impacted once the screen goes up as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
It seems unusual that nobody from council or the applicant has attended the site to in making an assessment of the impact. And we suggest that if the panel has any concern, as we do, that they defer the decision to at least attend the site to understand the impact.
We do have copies of the submissions with the photographs provided, I think. So, yeah.
Page 35.
Yeah, so it's on page 35 of the report. So we do understand the impact of the screen and the balcony. Okay, if there are no more questions, thank you very much for your submission.
If I may just add one thing, sorry, just because you didn't receive this as a submission, I just wanted to explain the mitigation measures are shown in the pink wire frames on the bottom images. So
Right.
the blue wire frames show the proposal as it is, and the pink is with our mitigation measures. So as you can see from this point here, that
It's actually very hard to see the blue because it's very dark. Only the pink ones contrast.
if I zoom in,
Right.
so that's that roof. That's what that roof would be cutting off, and our proposal would mean it's set back to there, so it wouldn't have an impact. Same for this one up here. You're losing the bridge with the proposed as it is, but with our amendment, you're retaining the bridge.
Okay.
Yeah, and then same from the bedroom, the balcony, losing the bridge here, but our one retaining the bridge. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's okay.
Right, the next speaker is Henry Chung from 35 Bayview Street.
Sorry, panel.
If
Yeah, we act for the Chung family, and we'd requested that I go first and then our client supplement our comments, if that's okay.
So this is Anthony
Yes.
Buskowitz. Okay.
Thank you. And we're going to be making submissions. So we act for the Chung family owned 35 Bayview, and we're going to be making submissions in 3 points. First, the power of the panel to make the decision today with respect to the biodiversity SEP 2021. 2, how to make the deferred commencement conditions, and 3, some solutions our client has with respect to the overshadowing issues pertaining to the development on their property, specifically with respect to the garage and structures on the first level proximate to the boundary. My client will, in large part, go through that third point. With respect to the second point, we've had a look at the documents provided with the application as well as the council officer's report, and note that the applicant's documentation doesn't deal at all with the biodiversity SEP. And 2, the council officer's report deals with part 6 of the biodiversity SEP. Now, part 6 came into force on the repeal of part 7 to 12, but specifically part 10 in respect of this property. But there's a savings provision that requires that in the event that the application was made prior to the repeal, that part 10 be considered. Now, I'm not saying it's fatal to this application, but it's fatal on a jurisdictional point. And we would say, in making a submission in accordance with our written submissions last week, that this matter should be deferred for a number of reasons, including making that power issue good. The consideration must be given to part 10, noting the date of this application having been made in early 2022 or late 2021. But furthermore, that part 6.65 of that SEP saves that in the event that the application was made prior to the making of the Water Catchment Act, which was in 21 November 2022. So without doing that properly, there's a power issue, and we say that the application cannot be approved. Now, as I said before, it's not fatal. That assessment can be made, and it's likely that the assessment would be found to be satisfactory, but without doing that appropriate assessment, the power doesn't work, and it would be grounds for an appeal. In respect of the deferred commencement conditions, we've made a substantive submission in respect of those. Largely, we think that the matter should be deferred so that issues in the deferred commencement can be dealt with. But it will be noted that the changes being sought as part of the deferred commencement conditions will affect how the building form is read from the harbour, which is a critical part of that biodiversity SEP. So a consideration has to be given under 1019 and 1023 to various matters, including the interaction of the building and the harbour. And without actually considering those changes to the plan, you can't fulfil that requirement under the SEP. So we would say that this isn't the right type of development application that should be the subject of a deferred commencement, but rather the deferral should be made so that any changes that are referred to in that design amendment deferred commencement condition at AA1 should be the subject of amended plans. They should be considered. It would give our client the opportunity to consider them, and the council the opportunity to consider them against their controls as well as against the SEP, and to also
Anthony, I'm just conscious that you have 5 minutes between the both of you. It's not 5 minutes for each.
That's fine. So we ask that the panel read our submissions with respect to the reasons for the deferral in regards to the conditions. Lastly, we seek for a deferral for a reconsideration of the plans associated with the garage and the level above the garage with respect to deferred commencements A and B. We think that there's a better design that can mitigate the issues for our client, and our client will go through a better outcome.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Chung, could you
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the panel. So I would like to emphasize one point, which is the proposed two-story form of the front of the house, consisting of the garage and the first floor walk-in wardrobe. As the design, it sits much further forward with minimal setback from the street compared to the footprint of the existing house. This results in our property being completely obliterated from the view as one walk along Bayview Street. The two-story form is inconsistent with the adjacent properties, and 1 year ago when our DA was presented at this planning panel, members of the panel emphasized the importance of preserving streetscape, which we have achieved. The impact of the reduced front setback and two-story form also results in permanent and detrimental overshadowing impact on the front of our house and our front room, and this has been included in my written submission to the panel. We have done our own analysis and identified that this can be mitigated if the front setback is increased from the street to the existing footprint of the house, which is by about 1 meter, as well as at least increasing the side setback of the first floor of on the southern side to the recommended 1.542 meters recommended by the council in the report. Again, in my written submission, I have included some shadow drawings to demonstrate that these mitigation measures. And I agree with Anthony that a deferral would allow for better consideration of this option. Thank you.
So
Thank you very much. Okay,
if there are any, we're happy
I'll
to
just
take
I'll
that.
just refer to the panel if they have any questions to ask. So panel members, do you have any questions? No? No. Okay, thank you very much. And the next speaker we have is Lauren Payne. Is Lauren Payne here? Oh yes, I can see you. It's needed.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Hello, thank you for your time. So I'm Lauren. I'm a property owner in the local Lavender Bay precinct in a heritage listed building. So I believe the council hasn't assessed the view loss from my property. And given the fact that I can see the
Sorry, Lauren, can you just state your address so we've got that for the record?
Yes, sure. I'm unit number 4 of 23 Waiwera Street in Lavender Bay.
Okay.
Yes, given the fact that I can see the existing residence, the roof line and the chimneys, I believe the scale of the proposed development will significantly impact my view of Lavender Bay, the harbour and the harbour bridge, and also the Opera House. So it's really disappointing as the view was a huge consideration when I purchased my first home. And I just believe that this proposal will decrease the value of my property.
Are there any questions? Yes. No. Okay, thank you very much, Lauren, for your presentation. Okay. So we have to speak on behalf of the applicant. There's quite a few people listed here. So who's going to be the key speaker? Oh, you're on mute, Bob. You're still on mute.
Still on mute.
Yep.
Apologies for that. Bob Chambers here. Good afternoon, panel members. I'm here with Stephen Isaacs, who's the project architect from Architecture Saville Isaacs. Although I'll be addressing you primarily, but Stephen's here and he may well have something to say about what he's heard about some of the submissions, particularly the view loss from number 39. And the applicants are also here, but they don't wish to address you. But if you had any questions for them, they'd be happy to answer the questions. So we're very pleased with the report. It's very comprehensive, and it addresses the matters, I think, that have been raised in the submissions. And I don't think that anything additional that's been raised today really changes the report that's been put before you by the officers in any way. So the applicants very warmly welcome the recommendation for approval. It's obviously been a long assessment journey since December 2021. And I don't wish to take up any more of your time than is necessary. And in that regard, I did provide to you by the relevant deadline a written submission which details the concerns, which are the only concerns that we have with some of the deferred commencement conditions, which go to really 2 categories. That's the side setback of the southern part of the proposed dwelling, but primarily the garage from the southern side boundary, and the extent of glazing on the eastern facade. So do you all have that submission?
Yeah, we do.
it has two graphics with it, one which shows the view corridor that's being provided between number 37 and 39. And the other graphic seeks to just identify the extent of glazing that's proposed on the eastern facade, and how that's not particularly different from the glazing of either of the two immediate neighbours. But adding to that, of course, that what you see there, that wireframe diagram, isn't probably picking up the shadows that are going to be cast over the glazing, because none of that glazing is on the same plane. On each level, it's different. And for example, on the lower level, you can't see the glazing at all because it's below the building which stands in front on the foreshore. We would ask the panel to give consideration to what we set out in that written submission, asking that the deferred commencement conditions requiring the garage to be set back from the southern boundary and requiring the glazing to be reduced on the eastern facade not be imposed for the reasons set out in my submission. Obviously, what I've written there is a bit too long to read out to you, and I don't need to do that if you've got it and you've had the chance to look at it. I would just like to mention that the DCP itself allows buildings to extend to a side boundary. It requires assessment of what's called the Galea principle from a Land and Environment Court decision. And that was the subject of a submission which we made to Jim Davis during the assessment process, and outlined why what we're doing doesn't offend in any way the Galea principle. And the principle that was given by the court includes these words: short lengths of single-story walls such as garages are usually acceptable on a boundary. And that's what we're saying here. We're saying that the garage, which is only something like 3.6 meters high and extends over a length of about just over 6 meters, cannot be considered unreasonable in terms of how the building responds to the streetscape and how it responds to the neighbour, because the building is otherwise set back from that boundary. And insofar as view corridors through to the east are concerned, we are providing that, and that's what the first graphic seeks to show, that view corridor is provided along the eastern side boundary. If I could quickly turn then to the submissions, the DA was accompanied by a visual impact analysis prepared by John Aspinall from Urbane. He's the person who specializes in view loss assessment. His assessment formed part of the DA submission. It was then the subject of the concerns of number 39 were then the subject of a further analysis that were undertaken. And as concluded on page 35 of your assessment report, we think that the view impacts of the proposal are reasonable. I'll ask Stephen to make a comment on what was put to him from the architects from SJB in a second. The other matters were then put to you. It wasn't clear from the second submitter exactly what provision he was referring to in the biodiversity SEP. I was a little confused by what he was saying, but if what he was saying was the provisions in the biodiversity SEP that capture the provisions that were previously in the Sydney Harbour Catchment Sydney Regional Environmental Plan, they were addressed in the DA documentation, and there's nothing in the proposal which offends that. If what that submitter was talking about was the Sydney Opera House buffer zone, which extends all the way to Lavender Bay, that was the subject of a specific heritage analysis that Jim Davis called for during the assessment of the DA. So we had to do a visual impact analysis from Sydney Opera House of this proposal, and that's been done and furnished to council and is part of the assessment process. in relation to the final speaker's comments, it really goes without saying that in this street, on this side of the street, the dwellings have excellent panoramas and views, and the living areas are designed and configured to capture those views. The speaker's concern with overshadowing appeared to be with a room on the ground floor which is adjacent to the street, facing not east but west. And what we say is that to the extent that there are shadow impacts from the proposed building, and bear in mind that the proposal, which has a two-story form at the street, has a flat roof, and the extent of overshadowing on the neighbour's house isn't significant. It's also set back from the garage setback, and clearly the garage, that's only about 3.6 metres high, isn't giving rise to any significant shadow impact on the neighbour's house at number 35. I think that I've probably said as much as I would like to say, unless you have any questions, particularly about the written submission, which I put in early in the week. But Stephen, I'd invite Stephen to contribute if he so wishes. Stephen.
Rather than making another contribution, perhaps we'll just go to the panel to ask questions that clarify, and then Stephen can respond if appropriate.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
One query that came up from the last neighbour was about the reduced street setback, and there is capacity with looking at the garage to actually set back the garage from the street. Is there any reason why you didn't actually reflect the predominant street setback in the proposal?
Mute. So yes, I can respond to that. So if one looks at this section through the site, because of the existing land contours and the way, therefore, the height line sits, the living spaces are set at a lower level to the garage. If one were to push the garages further towards the water, then that would result in a corresponding breach of the height control on the upper level. I'd also like to point out that if Bayview Street on that eastern side, the predominant street character of the placement of buildings along that street is that almost every property, they're all set at an angle to the street, to the angle of the street, and every property along that row comes right to the street, with the corner of the building, generally the south corner. That includes all the terraces further down. The street form was carefully modulated to respond to the street context of the heritage terrace properties along the way. We have set back we did set back the garage further than the general theme along there, and we also set the entrance of the house back further to create a landscaped front garden, which is not walled, it's not fenced. It's actually something that we believe offers to enhancing the streetscape and the amenity for the broader community. So I also would just like to point out that with the garage, one of the other constraints that we really had to work with was the fact that there is a street tree, a beautiful camellia along the street, and so therefore the placement of the access to the garage and the driveway, was there's only the one option of where you can put it. You can't, if you try moving it, you start affecting the tree. We've had a arboriculturalist reports, supporting the positioning where it is.
And just to clarify, I was really questioning whether, the garage is 6 by 6 meters internal dimensions, and there's potential to actually make it a little bit tighter and still accommodate 2 car spaces, which could...
in theory, one could squeeze it up and affect the amenity of trying to, use the car and get out, get in of the cars. But if you were to refer to the shadow diagrams that were produced relative to any shadow impacts on number 35, so we did, you'll see that at the equinox, there's almost no change to the existing shadowing. And in winter, that front garden and that guest bedroom windows do still get afternoon sun. So, we don't believe that there is any amenity impact or any unreasonable amenity impact on the neighbour through our consistent modulation of the building massing consistent with what's in the street.
Okay. Panel, other questions? We have questions. Dan, do you have any questions?
It's just one. I'd just like you to respond to the concerns of the view loss of Harbour Bridge from the adjoining property.
Sure. So I think it was quite clear from the view studies that the neighbour, number 39, had commissioned, that you had up on the screen earlier, that the area where they have concerns is out of the side window from their living room when one's standing in a particular position, because that window has blades, privacy screen blades on it at 45 degrees. So you have to be standing at that spot. Even when you're standing at that spot, what's quite clear is that the balcony itself and its balustrade is what you see. If it wasn't there, is actually the roofs of the properties along the water further down, and the awning, has a minor protrusion which doesn't affect the iconic views. It should also be pointed out that the proposed amendment or alteration of chopping a diagonal corner off the building would actually affect the bedrooms below the balcony as well. And we feel is quite some, unreasonable ask in terms of principles of view sharing. We would be happy to omit the privacy screen that's being suggested, because we do acknowledge that adding a privacy screen, could, be less desirable to the neighbour.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
I refer to your photo montage page drawing DA600, which shows a line of vegetation above the line of the garage, which adds softening and some greening to that facade. Can you explain by which mechanism that planting adheres to the wall, since there are no recesses or planters as such to actually provide an area for planting there?
Yes, so where this, on the southern boundary where there's the setback from the garage to the first floor, that is where there would be the planter, and then the selected plant is actually a vine type plant. I think it's a Belmontia, which is actually grows. So there'll be a couple of cables on the facade, and the vine would be trailed across there. I should also point out that there's a beautiful large camellia at the front of the property, which provides a beautiful green foreground to the building, and that's why we actually treated our facade in quite a sort of understated way, so that we really give the tree the emphasis and allow the shadows of the tree to play against the facade. There are some additional plants and trees in the proposed front garden as well.
And given the defensive nature of the overall facade composition, what percentage of that elevation is actually providing natural surveillance and overlooking to the street?
So there are windows on the first floor that enable one to surveil the street, and there's also windows from the entrance hall on the sort of left-hand side when you're looking at it, which would enable this surveillance of the street as well. So there's more windows to the street than what is typical along that side of Baby Street.
Sorry, my understanding is that the current proposal in front of the panel has frosted glass. Channel glass.
There is a portion of clear glass, just checking my drawings, immediately to the left of the door. Is that correct? Let me just pull up the, sorry, just give me a moment. Yeah, so could I share my screen? Is that, but there is to the left of the door, between the front door and the channel glass, there is a section of clear glazing.
So ground floor.
At ground floor, yeah. So if you're looking at the drawing DA201, you can see that. Would you like me to share my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay. Just a moment. Let me get that happening. Finding the right. Do share screen. Why is it?
GC.
Which software is yours?
It's in files. Sorry, I'm just trying to. Sorry, just a moment.
Can I ask another question while you're looking for that? One of the rule of the recommendation was to replace the glazed balustrade on the water side with a solid balustrade, and you have actually specified a brass vertical picket balustrade and BL2, and I was wondering if that would be an acceptable alternative.
Sorry, just one moment. So I'm having trouble sharing my screen for some reason. Wait a minute, it's there. Usually allows me to. Sorry, but if I can refer, I mean, I'm hoping that one of the council officers has
I think we put it on our
drawings there, but drawing DA201 has it clearly marked in red. It says clear glass to the left of the door.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And the glass.
Is that clear?
And is the glass immediately above it clear as well? On the next level?
I missed that.
It's the glass panel.
Yes, that's right, it is, yes.
So on both levels.
So the channel glass to the left, it's clear on both levels.
Okay. So did you catch my question while you were looking for us?
Catch your question.
So on drawing DA 500, you have some pointers specified, and you include a brass plate balustrade. And one of the conditions in the council office report was to replace the glass balustrade on the water side with a solid balustrade. And Bob has made a case for the kind of characteristics of the adjoining properties which have vertical balustrades. And would you consider that as an alternative to the glass balustrade acceptable?
Well, the property number 39 is glass balustrades. The property number 35 has the metal rod balustrades. Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you agree, being able to look through the balustrades is quite critical to the enjoyment of the views. Our preference is the glass, and we believe that the glass is, as shown in that photomontage, the extent of the glass is not excessive. But yeah, the rods is not. I mean, yeah, we could live with it, but it would be a sort of a less preferable solution.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any other questions? Okay, all right. Well, I think we've satisfied our queries. So thank you very much for your time today. And we'll go into a closed session for consideration of all the matters and make a determination. So we'll close this public meeting as of, I'm not sure the time, but as of 2:48 today. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, panel. Thank you. Cheerio.
Thank you.